So my next question for you, and I'm sorry we're deviating from the planned questions that we sent over to you. I have a habit of doing that. But so you guys are pretty advanced in the process of incorporating this into your strategy. And it's that kind of, it's the same thing, almost a bit like Africa, right? So Africa has had to adopt mobile technology a lot more than fixed line technology, because, you know, the telephone hasn't been around for as long. And so they're kind of leapfrogging in a way. But do you feel like some companies that are starting later that aren't necessarily as advanced as you guys in their journey towards meeting these obligations, can they catch up? Can they achieve similar targets in a shorter time frame? What is that kind of leapfrogging ability within this kind of journey towards zero carbon?
Yeah, a resounding yes, they can. If not, I think we'd be a bit screwed.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked the question, right? That's why I was asking the question.
So look, you know, I enjoy working for a company that's leading the pack. You know, there's a good handful of companies that are literally leading this journey. But I think we really put all of ourselves in danger if we say that's the standard that everyone needs to reach tomorrow. So start out with, are they behind if they're starting the journey today? Yeah, absolutely. But it's doable. But it's not going to be doable if said company says, you know, looks at their strategy director or looks at their IT operations person and just sort of throws it onto their plate, add this onto their plate. It's not going to work, and they're not going to catch up. So, you know, I think companies who haven't gotten started and are keen to getting started now have to prioritize this across their entire C-level. That's for one. It cannot be siloed off into one person to try to figure it out. Two, I think companies beginning their journey now, they're going to be hard pressed when they probably don't have the resources or the knowledge or the expertise to do this. And in today's labor market, they're probably going to be hard pressed to find experienced resource to do this for them. So, but that said, there's loads of help. They can hire consulting services. They can hire Schneider, of course, but there's all sorts of different companies out there that can help companies get started. What's the strategy? How are they getting their data? How are they reporting against their strategy? And then straight through to helping them drive the changes they need. And they don't need to boil the ocean. I think we touched on this before, but I think it's perfectly legitimate, perfectly okay to start with your own operations. Actually, I'd advise that, because having a company start their journey and jump directly into scope 3, yeah, I don't think that's the best way to go about doing it all. So it can be daunting, but there's plenty of space for folks to catch up.
So are you familiar with the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive in Europe?
Not in great detail, but I'm aware that it exists.
So I'm assuming they've got the equivalent in America. So I'm not as familiar with the legislation in America as I am in Europe. But so CSRD is part of it's an addition to non-financial disclosure. So it takes it to a board responsibility. It adds it into your non-financial disclosure. And as of 2024, companies over a certain size in terms of turnover, staff or assets are going to have to get audited by their auditors on whether or not they've met their obligations under this Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And at the minute, it's catching the larger organizations, but they're anticipating that over the coming years, it's going to be mandatory across all businesses in Europe. And I think that's part of why, I was asking you about whether companies have started or not, because, this legislation coming in is forcing businesses of a certain size or of a certain magnitude to start. If they haven't started, they're, it's a board level issue, they're screwed, right? And from what I understand, there's equivalent stuff going on in North America that kind of follows the same trajectory. But what's your, so are you seeing in practical terms that there is a lot more kind of incoming inquiries to Schneider, and a lot, the volume of work in this area for the business is increasing as these regulations are coming in? And what sort of volume are we talking? Like, is it like 200%, 500? How visible is that kind of increased demand for these types of services within your business? And then we'll go on to kind of the work that you're actually doing, but just as a you're just a
I'm going to ask my sustainability business tomorrow, because I'm curious how many RFQs, how the growth in RFPs or the growth for requests for support and in our consulting services has grown, because I'm sure it has. But two things come to mind. We have a sustainability business division. They do vendor agnostic consulting for strategy, renewability, procurement, supply chain decarbonization, anything linked to a sustainability, environmental sustainability, mainly practice. That team has grown from about 2,000 people to 3,000 people in the past, approximately, maybe the past year and a half, maybe 2 years. I'm not sure. Yeah. That's massive. Yeah, that's because there's demand. Yeah. Two, last week, so those are very high quality, high touch, global services. And there's no way, even with that kind of a team, we can even start scratching the surface of the small and medium business demand there's out there, because these directives are coming down, and like in Europe, it's not only the biggest, baddest companies in the world, they pretty much apply to everyone. And even with a team that big, there's no way any company could serve the thousands and thousands and thousands of smaller and medium businesses out there that, one, need help because they potentially haven't started their journey yet. Two, they're very understandably not equipped, they're not staffed, they're not resourced to do any of this in-house, so they do need to outsource it. So last year, just last week, we launched our Zygo Activate. And it's basically a SaaS platform, so no touch, low touch digital services that take that complement our current portfolio of very high quality, high touch global services into something that the small and medium business can access. We just launched that last week. That's very, very, very fresh. Yeah, that's really that's one of the things we're doing to try to even the playing field. I mean, it's easy for us, again, who work for these massive companies, can shout about all the great things we're doing and say everyone should do the same thing. Not, obviously not that easy. And, Schneider Electric and all other big leader companies, I think, have a big role to play in enabling the rest of the world to come along and not making it to where, you set the bar so high, they don't even want to try. That'll 100% defeat the purpose.
So again, I know that we've had a great conversation so far. I hope you've got a bit more time, because I wanted to go into the actual work that you're doing and go into a bit more detail about kind of the stuff that how you're helping your customers on this journey. So you talk about the 5 prongs of sustainability. Can you just take me through these areas and kind of how they're helping you navigate this journey and how you're using them to help your customers? Yeah,
absolutely. So our 5 prongs of sustainability, basically where we are, let me restart that. We have a very clear view on what data center operators should be doing to run sustainable operations. So, here in Schneider, we talk about the 5 prongs of sustainability, and this is our view on what we think data center providers should be doing to address sustainability in a holistic manner. Does it mean they should be doing all these things from day one? No, but ideally there's a strategy in place to address all these things. And really high level, I hope the first one's no surprise, but they should have a strategy. I'd be surprised how many, I am surprised how often this is actually overlooked, but there must be a strategy. There must be a way to execute on them. There must be a way to report publicly on their progress. And no surprise, we actually do have all those consulting offers and services we spoke about a moment ago that can help data center providers do this. Design. Data center providers must be implementing not only efficient designs, but sustainable, scalable designs. And that means making sure their company's core sustainability objectives are at the core of that design from day one. But it's not just about the design. Then how do they take that through to procurement? And what kind of requirements do they push through procurement to ensure those designs are filled with the most sustainable products possible? And here is where data availability comes into play. And I think we're going to talk about data a little bit later, so I'll leave it there. But within the products that procurement then go procure, they need to be requiring the data, especially at a minimum on carbon, on what's being filled in that design. The third prong is efficiency operations, and very high level, this is services and this is software. So the software needs to encompass not just the IT, the DSIM, but the buildings and the power, and then the full suite of services that come into play, the maintenance services to extend lifespan of equipment to ensure that it stays in life as long as possible, the end of life, the modernization services to ensure that modernization efforts have the lowest carbon impact possible, and then managing end of life. Absolutely zero landfill. Of course, we love recycling, but where possible, the revitalization, the refurbishment for second life, which is really big. Number 4 is renewable energy. All data center operators and providers of digital infrastructure should be, in my opinion, working towards 100% renewable energy goal. Slowly but surely favoring methodologies of procuring renewable energy that actually do drive additionality to the grid. And then the final is decarbonization of supply chains. And this is where you need to get into your scope 3 and start not mandating from day one is not something I'd recommend, but engaging your supply chain to establish a program with clear milestones and an objective. And because if you look at digital infrastructure or hyperscale data center, let's look at a cloud provider. We talked about Schneider Electric Scope 3 earlier, which is 90% downstream and 10% upstream. A cloud provider is pretty much exactly the opposite. You look at their Scope 3, and it's 90, if not 95% embodied carbon. So that's the 5th pillar of a sustainable data center, is to work with your supply chains to decarbonize.
And do you put within the context of these 5 prongs of sustainability, do you, over and above the strategy, which is, I'm assuming, the first priority, is there a sequence, an order? Is there a timeline that you work on? So is there an order and a timeline that you kind of are recommending operators that they can, use as like this is a bit like weight loss, right? You can not eat for the next few weeks, or do you know what I mean? Is there like how would you do?
Unfortunately, I love order. I love timelines, but I'd say not. There's so much variety, whether we're talking about hyperscale, whether we're talking about colocation, whether we're talking about distributed IT, whether whether said provider has loads and loads of archaic old infrastructure from 12 years ago, through potential acquisitions, or is it mostly new infrastructure? There's so many variabilities in there. I think it makes it really hard. That said, a good first step is your own operations. Like, we wouldn't suggest that as a first step, you focus on supply chain decarbonization. You focus on your own operations. So renewable energy, for example, absolutely. But a first step may be, I'll put air quotes around just here, maybe, looking at RECs, looking at purchasing certificates as a first step. A company may not be prepared yet to invest in a full-on PPA, let alone energy, let alone on-site renewables and all these different things. So I guess our best recommendation is not to boil the ocean. You need to have a holistic strategy within the realms of what's realistic, short-term, mid-term, long-term, and then tackle things in a way that pushes the ball forward towards your goal, while it's providing meaningful milestones that can be achieved. And operations is the perfect place to start.
But so are you aligned? And again, you don't have to. I tend to ask a lot of questions. You don't have to answer them, Anna, by the way. But
okay, yeah.
Are you kind of are you seeing conversations happening where you're talking about what you guys are doing and how you're doing it and what your kind of timelines and approach is? And then do you see anyone kind of following you or aligning around those timelines in terms of, so do you know what I mean? The big brothers wearing that jacket, I want one of those jackets, or, they're smoking outside, I want to go and try a cig. Do you feel like you're setting a timed approach for some of the engagements that you're having? Yeah. Or is it more kind of like at this stage, less driving them to letting them make their own decisions, as opposed to kind of giving them advice on what they should do to meet their, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm going to come down on the yes. So if we think about where Schneider Electric's setting the bar, I do look and see what our competitors are doing. I'm going to be quite clear and saying that we are far ahead when it comes to sustainability, not only sustainability commitments, but what we've delivered on today. Are other providers of digital infrastructure looking to Schneider as looking at our goals, looking at our net zero goals and saying, oh, we better align to them? Don't know for a fact, but I certainly do hope so, because we do have the highest level of commitment. But I will say, when we work with our customers, especially the big hyperscalers, who are laser focused on embodied carbon and who are laser focused on driving those reductions through their supply chain, I am very certain that the same conversations they're having with my team are the same conversations they're having with all of our competitors as well. So I would expect that as Schneider sets a clear 25% reduction of Scope 3 by 2030, and has a clear net zero goal by 2050, and has set that expectation of what a provider can do, I would not be surprised if those same hyperscalers turn around and say to the other players in this space, why don't you guys do the same? Because this is top priority for us.
No, and I'd like to think they are, right? Because if you see, if you see someone else doing it and demonstrating that it's possible, you really, need to kind of get on the train, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.